It was a typical Monday morning, but it changed everything for me. I arrived at the office as usual at 10:02 a.m., but immediately felt a strange chill in the air. The office, which had seemed like my second home for years, was almost empty. The desk was neatly tidy, but it was obvious that someone had already walked across it, leaving no trace of handwritten notes or the untidy whimsy I usually left behind in the chaos of my workflow. On the table next to my desk was a large cardboard box filled with things: an old personal computer, a few programming books, and individual coffee cups that were evidence of long nights of work. Colleagues dressed in corporate suits avoided my gaze. Even Julie, who had always been warm and kind, walked by today with her head down, as if she wanted to hide something. A few months before, things had started to change. At first, it was subtle: new faces at the general meetings, new slides with the vision of transformation. Then it became more dramatic. The old head of the technical department, with whom we had been working side by side to bring the system to the European level, suddenly left of his own free will. He was replaced by Arlo, a man with presentations, not architecture in his head. I repeatedly raised the issue of the stability of the platform core, but I was politely stopped. "Sybil, we need to look forward." Forward, in their understanding, meant faster, louder, brighter, not deeper, not more reliable, and every time I tried to convey that the foundation was not yet ready for such loads, they would say, "This is not your area of responsibility." Even though it was me who once wrote this entire foundation. Suddenly, as I sat down at my former desk, a young, elegantly dressed consultant named Nolan Wheatley approached me. His voice was cool and poised as he spoke. "Sybil, thank you for your participation. We've decided to update our team to reflect our new vision. Your position no longer meets the current needs of the company." I listened to this without feeling hurt or anger, but rather a cold, calculating silence inside me. Everything turned into experimental math all numbers, minimizing emotion, but leaving an indelible mark of injustice. I thought that every change has its own scenario, and I studied this scenario in advance, like an old book with unfinished pages. A flashback instantly hit me. It was 12 years ago when I first opened the empty administrative panel of the Granthorpe platform. Back then, on a night when the world around me seemed to be plunged into darkness, I was implementing the first line of code by myself. Gradually, step by step, I created a system that grew from simple algorithms to a multi-level architecture. This code, like invisible blood, lives in every line, in every function, and no one but me even knew its true weight. Now, sitting in this room, I felt a certain calmness. Nolan was using cliched phrases like updating the technical strategy, fresh perspective, optimizing business processes, but these words sounded like a cloth trying to cover old wounds. I wasn't insulted. I was just excluded from his vision of a new future. At the same time, I realized that my code remained not only in the company's servers, but also in my own archives, on outdated hard drives, in old documents, in every version I had saved as a harsh memory of years of sleepless nights. When they fired me, they thought they had wiped me off their books. But I've always believed that true power is control over your own story, and my story is written in every byte of code. My colleagues looked to the sides, as if waiting for a signal not to disturb the strict order. The mere word change triggered a silent reaction, like a quiet splash of water that disintegrates the integrity of the mind. I could feel an invisible tension in the air, a tension between the past and the future, between what I had created with my hand and what they decided to rewrite without me. My inner monologue was filled with cold thoughts. They think they can delete me from the system, but I still have the keys. This small fact, my backup, my code, no longer editable from the outside, was becoming a symbol of true freedom for me. And so, when Nolan finished his announcement, I thought quietly. All they did was create the illusion of an end, but in reality, this is just the beginning of a new game. I went to the window, where the sun had already begun to rise, casting long shadows through the office door. In this ray, I saw not destruction, but only a temporary transition, because my code remains and it lives on, and one day, justice will be served. The next morning, there were no usual 112 unread emails in the mail. The phone did not beep. There were no urgent tasks on Asana. I sat in the kitchen in my pajamas, and as the coffee maker bubbled, one phrase pulsed in my head. They really did it. I opened my laptop. Granthorpe Freight System, February 7th, 21. The same build that still had the dynamic scheduling module on it. It was deeply hidden, with no official documentation, because Nolan was supposed to write the documentation when he was still a junior, but he was always too lazy. I logged in with a local key. Forgotten, like me. The interface loaded slowly but steadily. The main dashboard showed familiar graphs, truck routes, delays, average load, fuel consumption, and everything was still working, because I had even foreseen what I was afraid of, a complete loss of control. I opened the optimization module. I called it the spider because it was made of conditions that you wouldn't understand without knowing the logic. They wanted to rewrite it a year ago, but in the end, they just changed the logo and called it Granthorpe Smart Routes. How cute. I checked the southern cluster. The delay on Hub 12 is 36 minutes. The reason was a new code that did not take into account weather fluctuations. And I warned you, routes in the south do not tolerate patterns. While I watched the forecast accuracy drop, a plan was taking shape in my head. Should I go back? No, even if they offered. I saw how I was being pushed out, not because of my competence, but because I knew more than they wanted to admit. And a woman who knows more is dangerous. I created an instance, pure, without a brand. I called it SageRoute, in memory of my old self, who once believed that the system could be improved internally. The system uploaded the same data as Granthorpe, but processed it better. It was cleaner, smarter. For the first time in a long time, I was coding not for approval, not for a pitch, but for myself. In the evening, I looked into Granthorpe's open application database. Their new platform hasn't yet been ISO certified. This means that large clients will not be able to sign a contract. It's funny, because we got the certification 2 years ago, under my name. All they have now is rebranding and an advertising website. I wrote a message to my former accounting colleague, Tama. Are you still seeing internal requests? I'm wondering if they've gone to the second line of support. If so, everything is on schedule. She answered in 20 minutes. Sybil, do you see our panic from the inside? Everything is falling apart. I'm keeping it a secret, but not a single new route is meeting the KPIs. I smiled, not gloatingly, just with cold clarity. It wasn't revenge. It was control over a process that I had once created, and I was not going to give it back. I opened my laptop and looked at the screen. Honestly, I was a little afraid. It was not just a device, it was a time machine. Inside was the old Granthorpe system, the version that I had once brought to the international level. I pressed the Enter button, the password, the same one that we once jokingly called immortal. The system started up. The colors were familiar, the fonts were mine, everything was still working, like my own ghost in the machine. I entered the module they used to call the complex monster. I called it my pride. It was this section of the platform that allowed logistics to work like clockwork. Optimizing routes, avoiding traffic jams, distributing cargo across regions. All this worked automatically, based on dozens of factors. And, spoiler alert, it worked without fail. Until Arlo came along. Sybil, we're thinking of switching to a simpler solution, he said at the meeting. I couldn't take it anymore. You mean simpler for whom? For you or for the system? He pretended not to hear me. And I already knew that he did not understand what the architecture of a logistics system meant. He wants a colorful presentation, and I created an engine. That morning, I went to my personal project for the first time, SageRoute. It was my own system based on the same principle, but without corporate restrictions. Everything was clean, fast, intuitive. I tested one scenario, cargo from point A to point B with unstable weather. SageRoute calculated the route, took into account traffic jams, and suggested where to change the driver to a fresh one. It wasn't just code, it was thinking. I never intended to take revenge. But when I saw the delays in the Granthorpe system, I felt a strange satisfaction. Because it wasn't me. It was them who couldn't keep what was working. Granthorpe doesn't work like it used to, I read on an industry forum. One of the customers complained about a failure in deliveries. Someone else replied, It looks like they changed something in the system. I laughed, bitterly, but sincerely. Then I got a text from Ed, one of the junior analysts with whom I used to work side by side at night, looking for bugs in cargo sorting. Sybil, I don't want to interfere, but we're trying to find a way to bring back the old logic. Can I ask? Is she still alive somewhere? I didn't answer right away, because two parts of me were fighting. The old, loyal part that would have said, "Of course, I'll help," and the new one, the one that knew the value of its work, and it didn't want to be used again. So I opened the options folder. Inside were concepts for a new interface. The design was simple, accessible, without complicated terms. Amira, an old designer colleague, wrote to me, "Sybil, are you still doing something with logistics? I would like to join. I've been crossed out too. So there are two of us now. Maybe it won't be about revenge. Maybe it will be about an alternative, about a choice. For those who were thrown out because they did not fit into the new vision." The first call came at 6:48 in the morning. I hadn't even had time to pour myself a cup of coffee when my phone screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in over a year, Hoagland. One of our first partners in Seattle, the man who once told me, "Your vision is the only thing that keeps these routes running." I hit reply, not out of nostalgia, but out of curiosity and suspicion. "Sybil?" His voice was dry. "I know you're not with them anymore, but are you doing something on your own?" I didn't answer right away. To say yes would be to admit that I was no longer just an observer. To say no would be to lie. I took a breath. "I'm working on an alternative model, more flexible, without the marketing tinsel." "Listen," he lowered his voice, "Granthorpe is falling apart. The forecasts don't add up. There's a glitch on Hub 9. The interface is a nightmare. Customers are already asking why it's slow. Some of them mentioned you. I heard it and felt that the moment was coming. The one I hadn't planned for, but I knew it was coming. I have a system that can solve this," I said quietly. "But I'm not going back. I'm not saving a sinking ship. I'm launching my own." It was the first time I said it out loud. After the call, I opened Slack, where Amirka and I had been bouncing ideas around for days. She sent, "Listen, I'm pinging a friend from the design community. He doesn't have a project right now. Do you want to try to make the first public draft?" I nodded to myself. It was time to get on the map. Even if it's not a big launch yet. SageRoute. We named it for a reason. It had to be a smart, reliable system. Without pathos. It just had to work. Because everything at Granthorpe is now stylish but empty. Meanwhile, Ed, my only contact inside, wrote to me at Signal, "I don't know how long the new version will last. We're being forced to remove obsolete elements. But it's your code. You can't replace it with a presentation." I just answered, "Some things can only be lost once." We deployed the first prototype. SageRoute calculated the Kiev-Katowice route in 3.8 seconds. It took into account weather, traffic jams, and even bridge repairs. Granthorpe would have taken 12 minutes. And then, with an error. We recorded a screenshot. Not for PR. It was for evidence. And it was already in the backup_pitch_1 folder. I didn't feel angry anymore. It wasn't about them anymore. This is about the fact that real things are born in silence, and they can withstand the storm. I was sitting in my small office overlooking the neighbor's garden. The only thing visible from the window was bamboo and an abandoned hammock, but it was this silence that allowed me to think. The screen showed the final test results. SageRoute had completed 100 logistics requests from Eastern Europe to Italy with 98.4% accuracy. And, most importantly, without any manual editing. Where Granthorpe was already bursting at the seams and generating routes through closed areas, our system provided workarounds even before the news broke. I knew it wasn't enough. We had to strike at the right time and at the right place. If we wanted to go public, we had to show something live, Amira wrote. She was a designer, but she saw the structure deeper than some techies, a real case study. And I remembered an old friend of mine, Lawrence from Transwest Rail, whose depot in Utrecht was always delayed. I used to help them in test mode, and he remembered me. I dialed him directly. "Sybil!" His voice sounded like we'd spoken just yesterday. "You already know that Granthorpe? Let's just say it didn't work out?" I nodded into the void. "That's why I'm calling. I have a solution. No signed NDAs, no official structures. Just test it and decide for yourself. He agreed without further ado. I gave him access to the dashboard. Temporary, protected. 24 hours later, he wrote, "Your decision saved us 4 hours on delivery, and we didn't even change the route, just the schedule, hourly. Is it magic?" "It's math," I replied, "and it's also experience that they threw away." After that, Amirka and I had an online session. She had already prepared a landing page with the first visuals, a light palette, minimalism, cases with labels. Everything looked real. Not a concept from PowerPoint. It was proof. "Are we launching?" she asked. Her voice in the headphones trembled with excitement. "Not yet," I answered. "We have one more test to run first, but we're close. I want Granthorpe to smell the smoke before it sees the flame." And that evening, I got a call from Ed. "They're panicking. Several clients have mentioned you in the context of better solutions. Jason, that new consultant, said it was a coincidence, but we understand. You need to hang in there. Don't comment on anything, just watch. It's starting to happen." At that moment, I realized, this is not just a rebellion. This is the emergence of a new force. Not loud, not public. It was quiet, but unstoppable. I opened the monitoring on the tablet, and SageRoute was breathing smoothly. No spikes, no loop unresponsive. I even developed a strange habit of listening to the system as if it were alive. It was breathing, analyzing, learning. No one paid me for this. There were no official tenders, no contracts with wet seals. But something about it was cleaner than all 14 years at Granthorpe. The system worked because it was willing and able to help. Ed sent another message. "Had a meeting with Davis yesterday. He threw in something about internal sabotage. Jason was starting to suspect someone was leaking information. I didn't say anything. I just listened. I could picture it." Ed, with his always overly tidy hair, sits across from Jason, who, for the second time this week, in the middle of a sentence, unscrews the cap from a bottle of mineral water. A typical sign of panic. I turned on the second monitor. It shows the location we were preparing for the demonstration, the logistics hub in Katowice. Tens of thousands of containers pass through it every week, and something told me that this is where the first crack would be. SageRoute has already analyzed 12 routes based on open APIs. One of them is the route that Granthorpe approved last month. I overlaid both trajectories and saw a difference of 3.7 hours. 3.5 hours just thrown away because of stupidity, because of automation, which does not analyze the real time of weather changes, but simply pulls the forecast from the previous weekend. "Is this your new approach?" I whispered into the empty room. My voice was not angry, only irony. I dialed Amirka. "It's time to move on. We need a visualization, something to show on LinkedIn, nothing directly incriminating, but so that everyone understands that we are not a theory." "Demonstration?" "Yes, a demonstration. We already had a prototype, a short video showing one route, predicting traffic jams, a detour, comparison. Everything was clear, but impersonal. We didn't show Granthorpe, we were just better." "By the way," she said at the end of the call, "Marcus from NovaFreight should be here to see you. He was recommended by Lawrence, NovaFreight, one of the clients we could never secure when I was at Granthorpe. Too big, too cautious. But now, it seems the situation has changed." I stopped. Something was changing in the air. I felt it not even with my logic, but with my skin. After months of silence, someone was looking for me. The system on the monitor flashed yellow, not an error, but a signal. One of Granthorpe's routes conflicted with the new schedule of Polish trucks. I took a screenshot and saved it. It wasn't revenge. It was, "Look what happens when you don't have your back anymore." "Do you mind if I ask you a direct question?" Marcus's voice sounded confident, almost smug, like a man used to negotiations. But there was also tension in it. Not panic, but curiosity disguised as a businesslike manner. "Yes, I'm listening." I crossed my arms and looked at the screen without smiling. "Did you create that route to Katowice? The one that saved 3.5 hours and avoided the traffic jam before the southern ring?" I nodded, simply, without pride, without comment. He was silent for a few seconds. In the silence, I heard a ballpoint pen click somewhere in his office. Then he said, "I have one network in the Eastern Corridor. If you can do the same for it, I'm ready to talk about testing. And maybe not just testing." I closed my laptop only half an hour after the call. Not because of fatigue, because of the tide. It wasn't a contract. It was more. A sign that the playing field had changed. And for the first time since I was fired, I knew I had the upper hand. That same evening, Amirka posted our video. It's concise. In a world where time equals sign fuel, equals sign money, we offer a new formula. Hash logistics, hash routes, hash smart A. We did not mention Granthorpe. We didn't need to. Those who had to recognize it recognized it. And the reaction was immediate. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel heavy in my chest. There was no need to come up with an explanation for why I was still silent. Now, I was consciously silent. Strategically. The silence worked for me. A message from Ed was waiting in the messenger. "We've started to review internal documentation. One of Jason's lawyers is looking for gaps in the contracts with the old consultants. Do you think he's figured it out?" I didn't answer right away. I just opened an old notebook where I had once sketched out the name, SageRoute, on the back of some budget for SAP integration. Once it was just an idea. Now it's a keyword in search queries. At lunch, I went to my favorite cafe, without a laptop, just a notebook and a pen. For the first time in weeks, I didn't open my calendar and count the hours until the next call. For the first time, the air seemed alive. People seemed real. The city seemed normal. I looked at the passers-by. Some of them were my former clients. Some were colleagues. Some might have already seen our video and guessed. But for the first time, I didn't care what anyone thought. Because I was no longer a part of the system that needed to be supported. I became a system. My own. In the evening, Lawrence called. "I heard that Granthorpe is on emergency level today. They say some clients are asking for alternative logistics scenarios." "Is that you?" I laughed, for the first time, not sarcastically, not to myself, but loudly. "What do you think?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "You're not planning to come back, are you?" "No, Lawrence, I'm not going back now. I'm rebuilding." At 7:46 in the morning, I received a call. The number was not saved, but my intuition told me it was important. "Miss Grayson? It's Johnny Martello, VP of NovaFreight, calling for you. Can I have a minute?" The voice was clear and direct, not the kind of voice that calls to get an opinion. He wanted answers. "Yes, I'm listening," I replied, already opening my laptop. "We have 11 destinations that are literally suffocating from traffic jams on the Southern Corridor. We saw your video. If you can repeat it for one of them, we're ready to discuss a pilot launch." I didn't answer right away. I turned on the map, opened one of the routes, and after 40 seconds, I saw a weak link. The reverse logistics hub was too close to the industrial zone without a normal intersection. The algorithm would have found it on its own, but I was faster. "Send me the entry point and cargo flow restrictions. I'll have a test solution within 48 hours. "Are you working with a team?" he asked. I smiled. With like-minded people. It was the first conversation in which I did not explain that I was not yet a company, not yet a product, not yet a startup. For the first time, I felt equal, and this time I was in no hurry to demand recognition. I dictated the terms silently, and it sounded louder than any pitch. On the same day, Granthorpe was urgently revising NDAs with former contractors. There were rumors that Jason had contacted lawyers in London. Ed texted me. "The boss is nervous. He says someone is using their intellectual property platform for their own benefit. He doesn't realize that this platform was never his." That evening, I didn't open the computer. I just took an old map, a pen, and markers. I started drawing by hand. It didn't make sense to the algorithms, but it made sense to me. Because what I was creating was no longer an answer to their decisions. It was a different world. The sounds of the city remained somewhere in the background, the distant hum of cars, the distant signal of a tram. I felt almost like I did in my teenage years, when I drew plans of imaginary cities, not knowing that one day it would become a reality. The pages were colored with arrows. I added marks, test codes, signed new bypass logic, and suddenly realized that I was not drawing a solution for their world. I was drawing a new system, my own. In the morning, I already had 26 new requests on LinkedIn. One of them was from Thomas Rank, a senior logistics partner at Borden Alliance. He left a short message: SageRoute, strong, looking forward to updates. I had no idea how he knew, but I knew the game had changed, not because I was being recognized, but because now I was part of the solution that everyone was afraid of but couldn't stop. I didn't open the message from Thomas Rank of the Borden Alliance right away, not because I was hesitant, but because this time I wanted to savor the moment. What was impossible a month ago was now becoming commonplace. Big players were looking for me who had been fired without explanation. I was devalued to an overworked techie. Now I'm a signal to the market. While I was thinking about my answer to Thomas, my phone lit up with a new name: Beatrice, NovaFreight. Her message was clear and short. Can we do a Zoom on hourly routing on a route from the Netherlands through Germany to the Czech Republic? Your approach could potentially save us 14 to 18% of time. The Zoom took place the same day. Beatrice is collected, direct, without a corporate veil. We tested your demo. The results exceeded even our optimistic scenarios, she said, flipping through the charts. We don't have a public version yet, I replied, but that doesn't mean it's not real. We ran a real-time test. Their standard route through Bremerhaven is 7 hours and 24 minutes. SageRoute, 6 hours and 2 minutes. No congestion, no risk, just different logic. Do you work with a big team? Asked Beatrice. I work with precision. I didn't lie this time. After the call, I leaned back in my chair. Something inside me was cracking, not from fatigue, but from a change in strength. I used to ask for a chance. Now I choose who I talk to. That same day, I received a new message from Ed. The auditors at Granthorpe are going to check all the changes over the past 18 months. They want to find proof of sabotage. But the system is not falling apart because of someone else's hands. It's because of their own decisions. Jason almost broke down at the meeting. I read this without regret. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth to show itself. And it had already begun. Granthorpe, blinded by presentations, is losing clients one by one, and SageRoute hasn't even come out of the shadows yet. In the evening, I updated the system map. Now it covered 17 European destinations. Each one was accurate to 95%, taking into account changes in weather, repairs, fuel, and hourly rates. I opened a new tab: partnership. This word used to scare me, but now it inspires me, because I was no longer solving other people's problems. I was creating an environment where problems don't appear. Before going to bed, I looked through my old notebook. Where once there was a list of mistakes, now there was a growth plan. Step by step, APIs for clients, modules for carriers, integration with independent brokers. Everything is in my head, but this time with a clear condition: no compromises. And Lawrence appeared again. Granthorpe received a request to review routes from one of their clients, and that request coincided with your demo. They were freaked out. They call it intellectual theft. Are they sure they still have intelligence? We both laughed. For the first time, laughter was not a defense. It was the reaction of a winner. At 9 o'clock, I received a letter. The sender is a London-based law firm representing Granthorpe. It contained a request to voluntarily provide information about the possible presence of code similar to Granthorpe's product, and to review the risks of misuse of intellectual property. I read it to the end, and I wasn't scared. On the contrary, I felt almost grateful. They weren't pretending anymore. This is no longer corporate etiquette. It was fear wrapped in legalese. I copied the email, saved it to the archive, and deleted the second warning from my spam folder. Because my code is not a copy. It is the source. They used it and only now realized who they had lost. Meanwhile, NovaFreight requested an official deployment. Pilot routes were completed with 98.7% accuracy, and costs were reduced by 15%. The numbers spoke louder than PR. During the call, Beatrice said, "Our internal analysts are amazed, and they even seem to be afraid that it's too good to be true." True effectiveness always looks strange when you don't expect it, I replied. We agreed on key terms: data isolation, independent testing, microservices instead of a monolith. It was not a contract with small print. It was an alliance on equal terms. I agreed to it, and this time without a single doubt. I received a message from Amira on Slack. SageRoute is on the TechSphere radar. They want to interview me. Should I talk to them? I stopped. Was I ready to talk? I used to hide. I worked in silence, coding at night. But now it was different. Yes, but without embellishment. Only the truth. That same day, I received another call from an unfamiliar number. The voice was familiar, though a little rougher than I remembered. Sybil, it's Julie. I'm not at Granthorpe anymore. They've expelled everyone who had an opinion. I've seen SageRoute. It's incredible. If you need someone who knows customers inside out, I'm here. I was silent for a few seconds, and then I answered, Come on over. But we're not building a copy. We're building something better. That was the key. I no longer repaired what was destroyed. I was creating from scratch. In the evening, I sat in the kitchen, holding a cup from the same box that was on the table in Granthorpe on the day I was released. It had a crack, but it was still intact. And so was I. I turned on the system. SageRoute worked without a single glitch. A mark appeared above the map of the Kiev-Munich route. Early optimization completed. The result? -4 hours and 17 minutes. I ran my finger along the route line, not because I needed to check something, but because it was no longer just code. It was proof. Evidence that no one can erase you from history if you hold a pen.